Welcome everybody. How are we? Good afternoon. Good afternoon everybody. It's the last session on day 2. I know you're tired. Good afternoon everybody. Thank you. I know, someone called me a ringmaster once. Yeah. Okay. Welcome. My name's Andrew Jacobs. I'm an independent consultant, and my job is just to introduce these people and make them look good. I'll also be asking some questions and probably do a summary piece at the end, but it's not about me. What we're here today is to listen for stories we've got from Stephanie and from Shannon. I'm going to get out the way because this story's awesome. And I think you need to hear it. So I'm going to pass you over to Steph Constantinides.
That's the one.
Working from Heathrow Airport. Steph, over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Oh. Might clap right back at you for being here at 3:50 on day 2 of Learning Tech. So, hello, Theatre 2. I'm going to probably call you Terminal 2 at some point. I do apologise. I am from Heathrow Airport, so my Theatre 2, Terminal 2 does get mixed up. But hopefully you've had a good 2 days, and for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to take you through our journey at Heathrow Airport of how we drove learner engagement over the last couple of years. So I work in the design and strategy team for Heathrow Airport, and I want to take you on a bit of a journey, right? I work at the airport, so it's only right that I take you on a journey, free of charge. You can choose your seats. I'm not an airline. But I'm going to transport you back to 2 years ago. We're not going to stay here long, because for those of you who know what 2 years ago was, it was very tough times, right? So 2 years ago, the aviation industry was in a world of its own, right? They were struggling. COVID definitely did a number on us. Terminals were shut for the first time in its history. Colleagues were deciding to take new adventures and do different things, and many colleagues were actually put on furlough. So what did that mean for learning? Our landscape completely changed. So learning at Heathrow 2 years ago was keeping the lights on learning, so our mandatory compliance, regulatory, 100%, we had to keep that going. The only other thing we had at that time was a content platform, which many of you may or may not know, Mind Tools. Anyone have it in their organizations? Yeah, a few, okay. So we had Mind Tools in as a content platform, but it was massively underutilized. And what COVID did was it gave us time to pause. For those of you who have ever flown through an airport, you don't have much time to pause, right? So COVID gave us pause. And it was in this time that we were able to stop and look at what we currently had and see how we could do things differently to make it more valuable. Enter my goal 2 years ago. This is the goal that I got given. Steph, increase platform usage to 30% of our colleagues at Heathrow. 30%, not that bad. It's okay. Manageable number. Any nods? Okay, manageable number. What if I was to tell you that the platform was currently working at 14% of our population? Okay, so then, quick math for me, I had to double the percentage and then some. Okay, I could still do it, right? Sure. Okay, so that was main goal number 1. Goal number 2 was make learning more accessible, more inclusive at Heathrow. How do we do that? Good question, I'll come on to it. And then how do we weave learning back into what we do at Heathrow as BAU, seeing as we've been on this pause? Okay, so here's my goals. Where do I begin? Discovery. So I did this in 2 ways. Number 1, we have quarterly surveys. Many of you might have them in your organizations. I looked at the data, and the data on this was really interesting because there was so much appetite across the business for soft skills, managing others, conflict, emotional intelligence. So we knew there was an appetite across the business in different functions. The second way I looked at things, I went out into the organization. So luckily enough, I've been in the company 12 years. I've worked in operational functions, in non-operational functions. I had reach. So I jumped out and had a chat with people. And it was in these chats that was really interesting, and there were 3 key insights for me. Number 1, when I asked about the toolkit, what was the main answer? I have no idea what you're talking about, Steph. Wonderful. Good to know, right? Great to know. Number 2, I had no idea that Mind Tools was a content platform. I thought it was a mental health app. I mean, there are some mental health resources in there, for sure. Not really a mental health app. Okay, cool. Good to know. Insight number 3, I don't have time to use it. Has anyone else heard that? Okay, right. We're cooking on gas. We're getting somewhere, right. So what do I do with this? I'm stocked with my information. I've spoken to people. The data's telling me something. Where do I go? I don't know what I look like from where you're sitting, but I'm 5 foot and I only have 2 hands. So I needed help. Enter my partnership with Mind Tools. Now, at the time, we hadn't done too much with Mind Tools, but what I can tell you right now, and this is not a paid ad, is if you have the opportunity to design content, to own a platform, and work with someone who's really going to part with you and pretty much integrate into your organization, this company, I cannot speak any higher. If they were an Uber driver, 5 stars, every time. It's important. Right, so I partnered with Mind Tools, and we had 2 key work stacks. Number 1, toolkit optimization, absolutely paramount. It's the place that we're going to start. Number 2, engagement strategy. What do we do once we build an awesome toolkit that Heathrow use? So, 2 massive chunks of work. Again, me and my extended family, Mind Tools, we couldn't do this alone. Enter my champions. Now, this is where we power up, and I love to call it powering up with people, because what we did was we reached out to many colleagues across the business. Now, I did this in 2 ways. Number 1, I reached out to learning colleagues in the business. They have that understanding of the platform, good. They have that passion to drive development and support our colleagues across the business. And more importantly, they have those connections in certain parts of the function. So, recruited some ASAP champions via the learning department. Brilliant, tick. I needed reach more. I needed to get into parts of my organization that were hard to get to. You may have that in your organization. We've got operational, non-operational, airside, engineering, ops, baggage. It's like, background stuff. We wanted to get everywhere. So the second phase of recruitment ended up with me giving the ASAP champions our first call to action. Go out into your functions and see who you could recruit as an ASAP champion. Bring them on board, give them a bit of a story, and let's see if we can snowball this out to get many champions on board, and all of us can work towards a common goal. Supporting our colleagues, making learning accessible whenever anyone needed it. Right. We were stocked up. We have many champions now in the business, and they're growing. But I won't carry on with the ASAP champions thing. I'll build this. Right. So we're ready to go. Me, Mind Tools champions. We're a team. We're volunteers, and we're an army. We're set to go. Now, we start with the toolkit. We completely, I'm hoping that works. Okay, so this video won't work. Right, so what you see here is a completely facelifted platform. We've changed the name. It's no longer Mind Tools, it's ASAP. We created it in-house, and we did that via the champions. All of our colors, Heathrow colors, for anyone who doesn't know, is shades of purple. So we've completely recreated the color scheme, and what you see on here is personalized by us. The stuff in the tabs, the banner where it says end of year review, we changed that based on topical specific topical events going on in our organization every single month. And where you see Spotlight, that is changed every single week, again, changed by us to be relevant to people in the business. And then that's an automated email that goes out to everyone every week on a Wednesday at 11:02. If anyone has Travel Zoo Top 20, that's where the inspiration came from for that. Thanks, Travel Zoo. Okay, so we had a platform, we were good to go. It looked great, it was relevant to our business and all of the stuff that was going on in our organization, it fit. Now what? It's relaunch time. Yes, we power up again. So, to do this, we needed media assets, right? So we went out, we created animations, infographics, how-tos, quick videos, and we armed the ASAP champions with all of these resources and said, go out into your functions, have chats, see where the challenges are, and use the platform and resources on the platform. Get familiar with the resources and use that as tools to help troubleshoot what is going on. So we empowered the champions. Let's go, let's do this, let's build awareness of the platform so we can get up to gear 2. Right, so out we went as little worker bees, straight for it. Success, relaunch, the foundation was made, right? So what do we do now? Okay, so there's a general awareness. Now we need to take it to the next level. How do we do that? Campaigns, enter engagement strategy. So campaign number 1, this was very timely because at this time in our organization, vacancies were going through the roof, right? We were building back better. We had loads of opportunities to move sideways, move up. So this is where we wanted to leverage career development. We have loads of colleagues in the business who haven't moved roles for 5, 10, 15 years and were anxious, didn't have the tools they needed to feel confident to move on to that next step. So we thought, we know how to hook you up, we know how to set you up for success and get you confident. So within this campaign, we ran weekly posts. In those posts, we would have curated playlist, which was specific to whatever we were targeting at that point. And then within the middle of the 6 weeks campaign, we took over a JHK live event. And JHK, John Hollandke is our CEO. He runs live events every single month online for Heathrow colleagues. We decided to take it over for the very first time. Thank you. L&D all have that. And we showcased colleagues from across the business of their career journeys. So they were just open and honest about the decisions they'd made within their careers, and more importantly, how they got there. What resources did they tap into? What support did they use? What guidance did they get from others? And what information can they share with the online audience to help someone out? Okay, campaign number 1, done. We needed an app. So before we took the nap, we decided we'd check out how we'd done. Relaunch and campaign number 1 was all pretty close together, so we needed to take stock. We needed to see what worked, what the data was telling us. And this was really interesting because the thing that came out front and center was when we shared those stories, and it was only for a snippet on that live event, our numbers flew up. So we thought, okay, here we go. This is something that we can use, and we hadn't used it in that way before to date. So right, we're going to take this. Let's go back to the drawing board, and let's brainstorm how we can do this. We have a seed. Let's help it grow a little bit. Let's brainstorm. And it was on a weekend evening. I was minding my own business, watching TV and eating. Can anyone relate to that? Wicked. So I'm sitting there, not paying much attention. There's adverts going on. And I know when an advert is good, because if it stops me eating, I know it's very good, right? It doesn't happen often, but this advert I'm going to share with you stopped me eating. So I'm going to show it and then explain why.
911, what's your emergency?
Hi, I've been in a car accident. My car slipped. There's water getting in the car and I can't get out.
911, what is your emergency? I came on paddleboarding and a hard wind is pushing me off the seat.
Okay, do not hang up.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm here at the farm. I broke my leg. Straight down 21 feet. I sure need help quick.
Are you by yourself?
Yes.
Have you tried to get out? Have you tried to bust the window or something?
I'm pretty far out in the ocean.
If I can't get to my cell phone, I'm talking.
Anyone else get goosebumps watching that? Anyone? We got a few nods. Okay, that's what stopped me eating. Now we get it. Right, so this advert is genius. Does anyone know what this advert is for, by the way? It's the watch, yes. Apple Watch. So I'm not here to sell any ads. I'm not getting paid to do this. And actually, I don't own any Apple products. But this advert for me was incredible. It captivated me from the first second it started airing. It gave me snippets of stories that I could relate to, and I was hooked in. Had no idea it was an Apple product, but it sold the journey to me so quick, just by something really simple, and I had no idea about the product. It was about the story, it was about the impact, it was about the journey before the watch. And actually, if you watch the rest of it, the watch is really quickly, briefly spoken about right at the end, because actually, the story is front and center. That is the power, right? Okay, now we're cooking on gas again. And this is where campaign number 2 came from. Right, thank you, Apple. You've inspired me. Took it back to the champions, took it back to Mind Tools. How can we use this inspiration? Let's take things from other industries that do it amazingly. Let's bring it into learning. Let's break these silo industry down, and let's use it to our advantage. So, here's what we're going to do. Storytelling, yes. Enter campaign number 2. Obviously, we had to give it a cool name. Create your own story. This was a 6-month campaign, that we ran. And we did this by recruiting colleagues across the business that were essentially some of our power users. So we dived into the data and saw who was using ASAP and got in touch with them. Whoever were really happy to share their stories, we got them on board, and we simply gave them a couple questions and let them talk, and we recorded it. And it was these snippets of information that we created, really snappy videos or graphics that became posters, and this was largely our campaign. For every graphic we made, for every video we made, we reinforced whatever message was within that with either a resource or a curated playlist. And within that, it would be Heathrow resources, Mind Tools resources, external resources. And we would build it and publish along with Heathrow topical events across the 6-month campaign. Now, of course, everything changes. 6 months, you can plan now and it changes tomorrow. Yes, we kept up with it, but essentially, that was the game plan. It was a busy 6 months, and we definitely needed a nap here. But before we did, we celebrated our success. And this is why. These were our results. So, front and center, this was 2022, so the whole year, front and center. You can see the dark blue right in the middle, 1,400 views in the one campaign. And what I want to share with you is everything left and right of that were the curated playlist resources that fed into the campaign. So actually, we created this movement within 6 months that we didn't know we were going to achieve. Now, let me take you back real quick, because I don't want to stay here. In 2021, apologies that this is a different dashboard, but I'll bring it to life. So the top resource in 2021 had 281 views. 281, top resource of the whole of 2021. 2022, Here's the resources. Our 10th resource was scoring higher than 2021's top resource. We'd cracked something, and what the difference was in 2021, we cast a wide fishing net, right, out to our organization. We made blogs monthly, but they were quite vague, they were quite open. And what we twisted in 2022 was we got detailed, we got granular, because we reached out further into the organization to understand those key challenges that groups of people in our organization and role specific were having. That was the success. So, 2 years, yes. If you were thinking, Steph, you're not going to make it, 30%, double in 14%, absolutely not. COVID was a struggle. I thought the same. I didn't tell anyone that, but I definitely thought the same. And here we are, 38%, and I couldn't be prouder of the work we put in as a team. And actually, there were even further goals that I didn't know we'd achieved. So we managed to integrate ASAP into so many different functions and weave it in to business as usual that we didn't think we'd achieve as well. And the third one, which makes me smile from ear to ear, is functions are now reaching out to us, to me, saying, Steph, can you help? We've got this problem, we've got this challenge, we don't know how to fix it, we don't know what to offer. Can you come in and tell us what you think? Wow. Okay. Now we're cooking on even more gas. This is exactly where I didn't think we'd be, if I'm going to be completely honest, 2 years ago when I got that objective. And I'm so proud. Now, this is all from getting really specific with a target goal, right? This is about going out into parts of the organization, because no matter what I know, I don't know what they know. Even if I think I do, or even if I've worked in that department, I still need to go out and do that. And that's exactly how we reach that 38%, because otherwise, absolutely not. I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So, I'm definitely going to have a nap after this, because I haven't slept. But I wanted to, before we go, I wanted to give you 5 tips. So if I was talking to me, sitting in this audience, and 2 years ago, this is what I would say. Speak to your end users, because that is where you're going to find absolute gold. They will give you, yes, speak to your HRBPs, yes, your stakeholders, your SMEs. Everything is important, but please don't forget your end users. Steph, do not forget your end users. It's etched in my brain. Number 2, this is where my continuous improvement mindset comes in. Find where the leak starts, not from where you can see it. Because quite often, I don't know about you, but sometimes we fix superficial problems because we haven't done that extra legwork. We haven't found out the root cause. And that is when you can make long-lasting effects, right? Not those short-term, quick plaster jobs. That's where the money shot is. Number 2, we are useful. Be useful. Because that's how we can build trust, and that's when we get two-way conversations, we get open and honest conversations, and we build those partnerships that then become easier to navigate over time. Number 5, this one makes me smile. Diversify your marketing strategy. Whenever I think about this, I think about the term one size fits all. Does anyone agree, and this is absolutely okay, does anyone agree with the term one size fits all? No hands, maybe one? Okay, just put your hand up, Ross. Okay, so one hand is up, and that's okay. So one size fits one. So how does one size fit all? And that's the exact same theory that we took with our marketing strategy. How do you reach so many different people? That one. And number 5, go organic. I'm not talking about my groceries here, although I do like to go organic. If you're going to film people, if you're going to record people's journeys, drop scripts. Where possible, drop scripts, because that is where they're going to bring that absolute gold that you can then reintegrate back into whatever strategy you've got, and that's where people will relate. They will get on board. You will have them in that journey, and that's the journey that you go on together. That's me.
We will have time for Q&A at the end, but has anybody got a burning question which they would want to ask Steph? Oh, lady in the third row there. Oh, brilliant.
Thanks. I love this, and I will use this. What I'm thinking about is how have you got any ideas how you will sustain this in the long run? I mean, you got a great step,
Yeah.
but now what's next?
What's next is going back to our audience, actually. So, yes, this was 2 years ago. The campaign, we reached out to them again. But actually, things are changing so quick, right? So 2 years ago and 1 year ago, when we reached out, we did a voice of the customer. Actually, it needs to happen again. What do people need now? How can we support, yet again, how can we support you now? Because this is a different landscape to a year ago, and then the year before that, my gosh. So for me, it starts with the end users, and that's why that game changer was the very pinnacle is your end users each and every time, because they will guide you. Let them guide you.
We'll come back to more questions after. I know you've all got burning questions. We'll come back to more after. What I think would be useful is, thank you again, Steph, that was outstanding. I did say it was a good story, didn't I? What we do is we've got Shannon next. So, Shannon, I'm standing in your light. Shannon's from the States. You might tell she's got a little bit of an accent. Well, I could say Shannon's from Boston, but then you think Lincolnshire as opposed to... What I think is interesting is to compare and contrast what we've heard from Steph from some of the bigger theory stuff that sits around this. Mm-hmm. I think it's been an interesting contrast. So, Shannon, over to you.
Thank you so much. Steph, thank you. That will be helpful. Thank you. And yes, one more round of applause, please. That is amazing work. And I'm just going to put Andrew to work here for me, if you would. And if you'll save one for me, that'd be great. See, if you've got them, use them, right? That's the way that works. Oh, thank you. Okay. Now, the story around Steph's journey particularly ties into what we are going to talk about now, which is how do we get there from here? Right? Now, if all of our organizations had a Steph, that'd be brilliant. Right? Thinking with a marketing brain, which is exactly what is required in this day and age of L&D. Because here's the thing. We know that if we host a training session, back when we used to do those live training sessions, if you offered coffee and donuts, people will show up. Right? Food is always a draw. But what about if we don't want to depend on food? What if we want people to show up for the sake of wanting to learn how to learn? Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? We could all agree on that, right? Yes. Again, so how do we get there from here? Well, one of the things that we absolutely need to pay more attention to is that marketing brain, is that Apple brain. The story behind L&D, the story behind your department in particular. And here's what I hear often. What I hear often is, well, I'm in learning and development, I'm not in sales. Yes, you are. Every time you put out a new program, you're in sales. Every time you start a new initiative, you're in sales. Every time you hand out a new workbook or recommend a video, you're in sales. So now what? How do we work? Well, here's my information. So let's get this out of the way. My information, you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on email. I like to say if you can't find me, there's something really terrible happening. The zombie apocalypse has finally hit if you can't find me. Also, QR code, just in case you're interested, is if you want to learn more, a lot of times we have a bi-monthly coffee chat, and we talk about things like this. So everyone is free to join. Now, 93% of employees say that a well-planned employee training program positively impacts their level of engagement. Let's consider that. That comes from a report created by Exonify. What does that mean? If we have employees who are engaged and they want to participate, what does that mean for you? That's not rhetorical. What does that mean for you? Does that make your job easier? Yeah. Because people want this. This is what they want. So where's the breakdown? So the breakdown here, what happens is that we fail to treat L&D where it belongs a lot of times. It's with branding and with marketing. Now, some of you may be familiar. How many of you work in sales training, by the way? Okay, I see a few hands. There is a sales guru, if you will, back in the States, long time ago, without giving away my exact age. He used to say, you can have the best product in the world, but if you can't sell it, you've still got it. What does that mean for learning? You can have the best training, the best programs, the best content, the best platform. But if people don't know about it, if people can't find it, if people don't care about it, then you've still got it. And it's collecting digital dust. And this is why marketing and communications is under the strategy and operations part of the LPI capability map. I led this project. Now, how is it going to help you? Well, let's give you some resources. A lot of times people ask me, can I get your slides? Yes, you can. Okay, the handouts were out. If he's done handing out handouts, then we are done with them. But this QR code will take you to a digital, the same one, only digital. Who's your buddy? Me. Those went through customs for you. Thank you. All right. So the QR code should take you to a series of links. Also, it takes you to a Dropbox or a Google file. So depending on your organization, I realize some of these are blocked. So you have your choice there between Google or Dropbox. Also, a series of additional links there that might be of interest to you. Okay, does this work for everyone? Yes? Okay. Now, don't you hate it when the presenter flips the slide before you're ready? Yeah? Okay, here's your warning. I'm flipping the slide in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Brand? Let's talk brands. Bond. One of the best brands ever. So if a movie can be a brand, then L&D can be a brand. So let me ask you, let me get down close, personal. When you think of James Bond, what do you think of? I'm sorry? One more time. What do you think of when you think of Bond?
Oh, Bond. Sexy.
Sexy, okay. Sexism, okay, all right. I'll take those two ends of the coin. What else? Shaken, not stirred. What else? Secret. Secret agent, man. Okay. Masculine energy. What else? Music. Cars. Right? So whenever I say Bond, an image shows up. It might be Daniel Craig. It might be George Lazenby. There's a blast from the past. Okay. George Lazenby with his one movie. Okay. It might be Sean Connery. It might be Roger Moore. It's all about how you perceive the brand, right? How you enjoy the brand, which movies you choose. It's all very personal. And L&D is also very personal because it's you, it's learning. And so when Steph talks about one size fits all, that's why one size fits all fails, because it's not personal to us. And we see that, and it becomes intuitive that we know. So when you think about your own department, I'm going to ask you, when you say to your team, to the people who work with you in your organization, and you ask them about your L&D department, are they saying something good? Are they saying something bad? Or are they saying nothing at all? Go down to Tesco and ask the young person who is stocking the shelves. Ask them who trained them. They're going to go, she did. You're going to, no, who taught you? Where did you get your training from? They're going to go, her. You're going to, okay, no. About slips, trips, and falls, maybe broken ladders. They're going to go, oh, that came from the computer. That, my friends, is your brand. Is that what you want your brand to be? I would hazard a guess and say no. But that's what it is. Branding is 100% perception. 100% perception. So how your people feel about your department and about the content that you put out is truth, regardless how you feel about it. So you have to fight against that truth. Now, some of you may be going, ooh, I don't know about all this. I don't know if I can do this. You can. You can turn around the boat if you feel like your brand is maybe people not even knowing you exist, or maybe you're only known for compliance training, right? You can shift that brand. And the way you shift that brand is through awareness, interest, desire, and action. And it's those steps. First, it's not unlike the commercial. First, it's awareness. It's what makes her drop her fork and go, this is interesting, right? So she's aware and now she's interested. And then there's desire there, and that's what Apple banks on, is that, now that I've hooked you, hopefully you'll buy a watch. And then they want you to buy the watch. That's the next part. But the first part is all about the awareness and interest, because I'm here to tell you, learning is all about meeting or grabbing the hearts and minds of your people. If you don't get the hearts and minds of your people, you've lost the battle. If they don't care, you've lost the battle. So that means the first thing to do is to build awareness and to build interest. The handout that you have in front of you, or the one that you're downloading, is going to help you do that. And so we're going to go through a couple of little exercises to help you kind of level set your knowledge, because here's where you want to be. I mean, who knew that Google was going to be a verb? We didn't know that, but it is. Nobody says, I'm going to Bing something. Nobody says that. you Google something, and these other brands up here, they all have, and in your brains, some of you may be thinking, British Airways, yes. Others may be thinking, British Airways, no. But your perception is 100%. So what you want to do is you want to build brand awareness. All right. Because, this is another point as to why this is important. 74% of candidates revealed that they want a job that makes them feel like their work matters. So that means now that your brand has to connect those dot points. Your brand has to make them feel like their work matters. And if we go from the previous story, they connected those dots. Steph connected those dots to make them feel like their work matters. And that's why you see engagement numbers peaking. Because they're connecting those dots and you're helping them connect those dots. So first off, we're going to build a brand statement. And we're going to build that brand statement starting on page 3 of that handout. So get with your study partner, whoever it is that's lucky enough to be next to you, and I'm going to give you a few moments because I'm asking you 4 questions. First off, who do you serve? And that may seem like an obvious question to start with, but again, it's not that one size fits all. You may say, I serve my organization. Do you? Do you really? Who is the priority person on your list? Who is the high-use, high-impact department, groups of people, roles within your list? Is it managers? Is it salespeople? Is it frontline employees? The people turning the widgets? The people from the top? The people in the middle? The salespeople? Who is it? Who's the one that if those people disappeared, your department would collapse upon itself? That is who you serve. Thinking about why do you care? That's an important question. Why do you care? Why do you care that the people that you serve are successful? Why is this important? And it's not because you'll still have a job. Well, your mortgage company may appreciate that. Okay, then what do you provide? What's unique? I provide training materials. That's not unique. What do you provide? What do you actually help people do? This is what we do for a living. This is what's intrinsic to us. What is it that you do? What do you provide to people? And lastly, what makes you different? I just had an interesting conversation out on the expo hall. And it's one of those platforms out there, one of those ecosystem type platforms. And I stopped primarily because I was rearranging my backpack on my back. And so because I stopped, that gave the unspoken signal to, yeah, let me talk to you. So he came up to me and he said, what made you stop? And I said, well, this backpack's getting heavy is what made me stop. I said, let me ask you something. And he said, okay, I'm open. And I said, what makes you different from that one there, and that one there, and that one there? And he said, well, marketing tells us. I'm like, okay, no. I want to know really what makes you different. And what makes your department different than maybe other L&D departments, or even within your own organization? What makes you different from marketing or finance other than the obvious? Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of moments. Let's give you 2 minutes, 3 minutes, feeling jiggy, to talk about this with your person next to you, with your study buddy, and see how many of these questions you can answer between each other. Maybe have a discussion. If you work from different companies, have a discussion about these 4 questions and see where you land, okay? Your turn. Let's go. right. Excuse me. Back up here. It's always the problem when you tell a bunch of trainers to talk. That's the risk you take. I knew the job was dangerous when I took it. All right, how do you feel? Easier than you thought? Harder than you thought? A little frustrating?
Yeah, not enough time.
Not enough time. We'll talk to Don Taylor and say, we need more time. Well, what are your thoughts? Who wants to share? Any epiphanies, any ahas? Yes, ma'am. Microphone's coming.
Thank you. So just to give a bit of context, I work in developing training that's sold, so I'm not an internal HR person. I have that background. So it was interesting to look at who do you serve, because from speaking to Saskia, it was like, actually, our sales team is really who I serve. That's, getting the right product for them to sell is what we're looking to do. So I think that was interesting for me, because I would have said, our end users before I came into this room, but now I look more at how that's, what we provide and what makes us different and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a bit of a revelation to be like, oh, actually, it's our sales team.
Excellent. Brilliant. Good. Anyone else have a revelation like that? It's the end of the day for me too. Ma'am. She's your trainers.
So I'm not sure if this was right or not, but I ended up just kind of listing all the stakeholders I work with, because I've got my learners, and then I've got kind of the local L&D teams as well, because I'm a global lead, the regional leads, kind of the learning council, the different managing partners who kind of report in, and it's a lot more departments than just the learners who will end up taking the training.
Right.
It's actually all the other people who will benefit from them knowing that knowledge.
Right, and there's no right or wrong, just things that require thought. And in your case, it requires a little bit more thought. Because when I spoke about this just a few moments ago, I used the terms high impact, high use. So who in your nucleus are the ones that gain the most from what you do? Those inherently are the people you serve. Those are the priority users. And then subsequently, that is who you know. When you think about your brand messages, that's where it's going, right? And so if you think about the commercial that Steph just showed, who's the user? It's not watch buyers. Who do you think the user was for that particular commercial? I'm sorry? Humans, yeah. Humans who have found themselves in situations that might be dire. So they are talking to that, oh my gosh, that could be my mom, right? Or it could be my grandparent, or it could be that uncle who goes off running in the middle of the woods. It could be any one of those people who put themselves in situations where they may need help. Very specific. That's why it tugs the heartstrings. Okay. So again, no wrong or right answers. It's about thinking through who you need to reach and why you need to reach them, because the whole point here is to get seen. Many of you, lurk behind HR or operations or finance, and you don't necessarily have an L&D voice. And I'm encouraging you to build a voice, because in order to be seen is to be valued. And we want you to be valued. So for example, when you think about brand, and Stephanie had it in her presentation as well, you think about Heathrow, you think about purple. That's always the first thing that comes to my mind after landing safely. Call me crazy. But one of the companies that I worked for in the past, when we built a brand from scratch, these were some of the things that we thought about. We put it together exactly as a marketing template would. So you've got the brand colors, you've got what the tone of voice is, how we're going to engage with them. That was our official stamp. And then during holiday season, if you wanted to use certain colors over the holidays, you can use those, right? And we also partnered with our marketing department. So our marketing department helped us put this together so that it looked professional. It looked like we knew what we were talking about. It's all part and parcel. You can't put out training materials with, a lifted Google image from the internet. It doesn't resonate. And speaking of images, then you have your image package. These are the colors that we want you to use. These are the images that we encourage you to use. I worked for a horticulture company. So we were going to use imagery that promoted wellness and breathe and flowers and things that were pretty like that. Not a clip art of a dude or a lady holding a flower. Something that resonated. This is all part of your brand. These are things that you need to think about. And in this handout, I'm working you through that journey to understand what the tone is. So one of the things here that's also in your handout, it's asking you, what phrases do you use that are L&D specific that maybe you need to change up? All right, we use things like skills gap, competencies, capabilities. We use words like that mean nothing to no one outside of this room. How do we change that? How do we change our voice? There are 3 ways here to be able to reach people. And Steph, again, gave some really great examples of this. So there's 3 specific ways: internal, direct, and internet. When you say internet, I'm thinking of things like your internal website or maybe your LMS. Not that I think that you should use your LMS as an advertising post, because no one wakes up in the morning and says, gee, I wonder what my LMS is doing today. No. Okay. So we have to reach them in different ways. So, word of mouth, definitely one. What's the tribe? What's the community? Who are the champions? Then, think direct. Old school, flyers, posters, mailers, newsletters, text messages, promos. Another company that I worked for, pretty large office building. And how were we going to get some of our messaging out? Part of our brand kit were good old-fashioned door hangers. So we created door hangers that would go on each of the office doors that reminded people, lunch and learns, right? Good old-fashioned ones, reminders, nicely branded, reinstated our message. So don't be afraid to go old school. You can do that. Posters, infographics. Just don't forget to change them out. You can't use the same ones over and over again. And remember about your target audience. Who's the target audience for that particular piece of branding? I would ask you to also say no to the corporate newsletter. How many of you have a corporate newsletter for your organization, corporate newsletter? How many of you get like this much space on the 5th page? Just say no to that, because that does not build awareness. What builds awareness are direct messages, things like this. It's just you, and it's short, and it's clever, and it's catchy. It fits your brand, whatever it is, right? It speaks to you. I did this last night when I was thinking about Steph. It's like introducing your personal content library, which is exactly what they were trying to integrate. So an email that could have went out like this to management or somebody else could have looked maybe not like this, because that's not exactly Heathrow-esque, but you make it yours. But the key here is that it's targeted and it's short and it's got a call to action, that big pink bar. Access it now. Now. Do this now. Because if you don't tell people what to do, they don't do it. Okay? Good old-fashioned marketing. So one of my recommendations for you is to look at marketing books, read marketing psychology, because there you'll be surprised if you've never looked at it before. There is a lot of connection between marketing psychology and learning psychology. So I encourage you to make those connections. So you want to say yes to things that are short, easy, fun, to the point, because you want to know, again, what people are saying about you. And you want them to reflect the message. Here's what I'm going to ask you. Ponder this for a second. When people leave the room after talking with you or collaborating with your department, what is it that you hope that they say about you? I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Write that down right now. What is it that you hope that people are going to say about you or your department after they leave the room? What are some of the words that you're hoping that they're using? Some of the phrases that you're hoping that they use? Okay, shout them back at me. What have you got? Just shout it out. Useful. I'm sorry? Useful. Useful. What else? Surprising. I'm sorry? Oh, woo! Okay, yeah, I'll buy that. Inspirational. Innovative. Impactful. I'm sorry? Motivating. One more time. Motivating. Yes, all of those words. Amazing. Helpful. So those are the sorts of words that you need to weave into your branding messages, because you're making that connection. You're trying to make that connection. This information is helpful. This information will help motivate you. This information will make you go, woo, at the end of the day, right? So you want to be able to blend those in. And then sometimes, depending on your organization, a little bit of sense of humor doesn't hurt. We put together a safety campaign, the last organization that I worked for, a safety campaign, that the whole thing was built around, we want you to go home with all 10 fingers and all 10 toes. That was the campaign. Hopefully catches people's attention. But what it does is it tells them that we care. We could have led with, well, safety numbers say, but who wants that? We want you to know that we care about you. And so, some of the other things for you to think about here: blogging, videos, your website or intranet page, and learning tech. These are all different points that you reach people. I want you to take notice, and I can say this now because I've seen Stephanie's presentation. There are not a lot of bullet points here. You don't see wall-to-wall text, right? We're not killing you with text because that's boring. And was boring one of the words that came to your mind a moment ago? Are you hoping that people say boring? No. Okay, so we want to keep everything aligned. And so when we talk about blogging very specific. Every one of you should have a blog in your organization. Every one of you. Why? 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 I'm sorry? Presence. Yes, you're building presence. Sometimes you may talk about something that might be general. Sometimes you're talking about things that might be fun. Okay, put out a blog about why dogs are better than cats. Okay, it creates conversation for one. Maybe you didn't have a better idea, okay, but at least people are talking about you. More importantly, is you want to put out information that resonates. You want to be helpful, useful, motivating, create blog posts that do that. And it doesn't take much. 500 words, 300 words, 200 words. Anyone that's familiar with Seth Godin, he writes 150 words, he calls it a blog. It's a tweet, but he calls it a blog. Okay, do that. All right. Your homework? Shannon, yes. Your homework. All right. You are going to turn to page 9 of your handout. There are 10 branding questions there. You're going to answer those questions honestly. This exercise only works if you do it honestly, and then you think about where can I improve. Other parts of the handout ask you about words and tone. What do you hope for? What's your image, etc. But these 10 questions will help at least pull you in the right direction when you're thinking about the next time you write or develop a poster, or the next time you develop an infographic, or the next time you do write a blog post or an email. Yes, your emails need to go with that too. Emails that are sent out to the field, emails that are sent to leadership, all need to mirror your brand. So my out of office right now, if you were to send me an email, you'd get an out of office that said that I'm off slaying, boring training with a sword. And I thought about that. I was like, well, do I really want a client to receive that? My business name is Learning Rebels. Come on, we got to make the connection. Right? So even in emails, we try to maintain the message that we're here to do things differently, that we want you to think through a different lens. So whatever your message is, be sure that it's fully integrated. And on that note, stay curious, be rebellious, and take over the world.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sharon. Well done, Andrew. Knock it all down. Some questions. I know there was questions before for Steph, and you've probably got questions for Shannon as well now. What would you like to know? Ooh. Any hands?
Hi. So I should say I have a vested interest because I worked with Steph on that project. But yeah, I'm super interested in Steph and what you thought of what Shannon was talking about and what that would look like in your context.
What was that last bit, Ross? Just that.
What does it look like in your context? What Shannon's spoken about?
Yeah.
And how you've done your stuff. What related from what Shannon said, and does anything stand out?
I think the brand, actually. So that's really where you need to base that's the foundation, right? And all of that stuff that Shannon was talking about, your brand, everything matters about your brand. So it's not just one thing. Like even Shannon said about the email, you've got to think about a different perspective. Look at it from 360, because actually, if you're missing part of your brand somewhere, there's a giant hole there, right? So then it's not unified. It's not singing from the same hymn sheet, and then it looks disjointed. So I think for me, that branding part, I'm going to take that back and make sure I don't have any disjointed parts for sure. I mean, I took loads of it. I wish I had a note paper and pen up here because I would have been scribbling, but I'll watch the recording back actually.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much for the two presentations. It's really awesome. My question is for Steph. You talk about the idea of having the storytelling and asking people and listening to people, telling their story. I think it's amazing. I'm trying to do the same in my company, but unfortunately it's just by text because people are all around the world, so it's really hard to record them. But my question is, what kind of question do you ask to make it related to learning, not only telling us about their story?
That's a really good question. So actually, we got them on board by not talking about learning, which was the irony, right? Because as soon as you say learning or L&D, you've lost your audience. So how can you bring them on board and say, we want to talk about you, we want to get your stories, any challenges, any struggles, and actually how did you overcome them? And when we spoke to people, they did it in so many different ways. Not everything was about the platform, but that was good because then we had a diversity of tackling things. And that's also learning, right? And it's a byproduct. Learning, when it's not mandatory and compliance, learning is often a byproduct of others. You're building from other experiences. Shannon is the first time I've heard Shannon speak. So I'm learning, sitting here right now. And if it wasn't an official L&D, you're always learning, right? When you talk to someone randomly in the street, that's unofficial learning. So I guess my advice is, maybe don't think about learning. Grab them, let them tell their story, and the learning falls out of that, right? If it doesn't, I apologize, but I'm sure it will.
We've got time, probably 2 questions.
Thanks. For those videos, was there a length of time that you thought was best, that was not too long or too short for better engagement?
For campaign number 2, yeah, absolutely. So we didn't want to go past 55 seconds. And actually, the sweet spot for us, most of our organization is operational, so you need to get them quick. Ideally, 30 seconds for those videos, because even though we spent half an hour, 45 minutes talking to them, our videos were just chunks on really small bits. I had problem with how I brought myself across in the interview. So I did this, done. That's your video. And you can chunk it in loads of different ways. And even if the message or the learning is the same, that's repetition. So keep it chunked. That's think TikTok, think Snapchat. If you can get as close to that as possible, that's what the world expects. So we need to try and make sure that we're sitting in those, expected time frames.
And I would say keep the point up front. Start with the point. Especially if you're dealing with 30 seconds. People don't want to wait for the 29th second for you to get to the point. So especially with something that short, it's important that you just get right to it.
Awesome. Last question.
Hello, thank you both. Very inspiring. What I was wondering about, and I did come in slightly later than everyone else, as it may has been covered already, but this is more about how you market your L&D department, how you get engagement for people to using content that's there. How do you feel about the content itself? Because that has to be of great quality, and you were, repeating, and rightfully so, that the end user is the most important person. Right. So how do you apply this to the content that may already be there?
It's a good question. Did you want
to? I'm starting with the assumption that your content is already quality. Now, if your brand has to align with that. So if you know in your heart of hearts that your content would put an insomniac to sleep, then you've got to start there. You have to start there. But that doesn't mean that you can't do some little things to build momentum, but you know that you can't have that huge disconnect, right? So you've got to bring those points closer together. So that's my advice, to keep that in mind. So I don't know if you want to build on.
No, that's a really good point. I would say that the confidence in the content is from us using it within learning and actually the organisation, we get feedback all of the time. We're always asking, we're always checking in with everyone who's using it, and the feedback is good, right? So that's our starting point. And number two, a lot of the content that we also have, we create, and then we host within it. So we kind of do our own QA, and again, with other learning members of the team. So we almost do QA. It's pretty much baked into what we do all the time, right? It's this cycle. It doesn't stop. We don't sleep sort of cycle. So, yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to finish just with a couple of thoughts that have come from what you've been speaking about. First one is the gap between perception and expectation. I think we assume they're the same thing, but they're not. And that's really important. We assume people expect something from us, but actually they have a perception which is informing that. Second one is who cares? Who cares what we do? If we've got to care about what we do first, and I think there's a bit of self-care required first. And something that just came to me about best practice is that best practice is a bit of a misnomer. Best practice is average practice. So if you're applying best practice principles, you're applying average practice principles, because that's what everybody else is doing. Just one to think about. It's best practice in marketing. It's what everybody else does.
Right. Best practices in marketing, best practices in general, it's a best practice because it worked for you.
Absolutely. Exactly.
And if you take that out of context, it no longer becomes a best practice. Right,
Absolutely.
Which is why I always use the term evidence-informed practice.
Absolutely.
So something that's been proven.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think there's a danger that we go away and we do the best practice without understanding it in our context. And you can't understand your context unless, like Steph's done, has gone out and found out exactly what the problems are. In terms of marketing, like Seth Godin, I also blog every day. I say blog, 150, 200 words. It does make a difference. I get about 500,000 views a year on the stuff I blog. So people do read it, and it does make a difference. Massive thank you to these two, please.